Before we get into some Saahdiq Charles replacements for Tennessee, we have the early opportunity to break last month's like high here on Titans today. So like today's video, I think we're going to blow that number out of the water. We're already on a fantastic pace so far, on pace to crush it. Let's keep it up. Like today's video, especially if you're excited for preseason football to be here for Tennessee. As we broke down in our short posted here on Titans today, Saahdiq Charles pulling quite the stunner, retiring on Tuesday from the Titans organization. He was the favorite, listed as the starter to take over at right guard this upcoming season. Seems like he just didn't want to keep playing for whatever reason, whether it's just fatigue, whatever. He has retired, and the loss of Charles, I think most of us would agree here for being objective, makes an already shaky right side of the offensive line a little bit more unstable. There is still, there are options, we'll get into it on the roster. There are some free agents, the trade targets as well, we'll discuss. But this was somebody who this team clearly wanted to start at right tackle. It's why he was number one on the unofficial depth chart. Why a lot of the real reporters have been like, yeah, keep an eye on Charles there. He was okay last year for the Commanders. But I think of all the position, I think sometimes, as an aside, position coaches can get too much power sometimes, or maybe not enough power. There's one guy I trust, it's Bill Callahan. Bill Callahan says, I want you. Okay, it's probably gonna work out. And if it doesn't work out, that's probably a you problem more than it was the team or the organization's fault there. Charles was up and down last year, but he was gonna start at right guard. I trust the left side. Yeah, Latham's a rookie. I think he'll be fine. Skoronski, I'm a huge fan of. I think he's going to be an all-pro caliber player. Lloyd Quessenberry gives you stability at that pivot point. It's the right side where we'll talk about Dillon Radunz, and to make room for the spots, I'm going to put Daniel Brunskill there, though I think he ends up being the backup center / interior swing man. And Nicholas T. We'll ignore the right tackle. That's its own fairly large question mark. But got to figure some stuff out at right guard now with Charles out, and former disappointment pick Dillon Radunz now maybe in line. More on him in a minute. But what is your panic level over the Saahdiq Charles surprise retirement? It's the pinned comment on today's show, so if that ad comes here on YouTube, take advantage of it. Head down there, scale it for me from 1 to 10. 1, the low end, of course. 10, the high end. I will say, I thought Dillon Radunz looked a little bit better last year. Now, over the course of his NFL career, it's been interesting in terms of having some really bad moments in the past. I do think, and look, I don't even really think Lachavious Simmons is much of a viable option here, but after Radunz had spent time at right tackle, and then they moved him to right guard. He's allegedly up about 10 pounds. He says he feels comfortable at it. This is, I think, the top option for Tennessee. Now, if it's not Radunz, I would look at Daniel Brunskill. Now, I acknowledge that, there's got second-year lineman Andrew Rupich and UDFA Brian Dooley and former 2020 7th-round pick by the Bears, Lachavious Simmons. I think Brunskill is your obvious second option. Now, he's kind of been prepped to be, hey, injury goes down, you're the first man up on the interior, including center. Maybe the development here with Charles means Tennessee takes a different approach, but I would power rank it Radunz most likely, then Daniel Brunskill, particularly if Radunz struggles. Now, maybe you think Tennessee needs another offensive guard. So some external candidates, replacement options here to come on today's show. Do you think that's the case, even just for depth purposes? Y for yes, N for no. For free agents looking more bigger names, not like, they signed a UFL guy to fill the roster spot for the next 3 weeks. Guys that could maybe play a role. Big V, the former Eagles and Lions right tackle / right guard, has battled injuries in recent years, why he barely played that much in 2023. But Halapoulivaati Vaitai is a good-sized offensive lineman who has talent. The injuries might have been too much. This is someone you're not signing just off the street. You're bringing him in for a visit and doing medical checks as well. All right, next up is Scott Quessenberry, who might be a name you guys are at least somewhat familiar familiar with. Now, he recently was brought in by the Miami Dolphins for a workout. Yes, there is the relationship to David Quessenberry, by the way, as well, and Paul Quessenberry, too. But he spent most recently 2022 with the Houston Texans. He tore his ACL, MCL in almost a year to the day, actually. It was just a little bit over a year to the day in Houston. He has played snaps. He's played 26 starts, or has 26 starts in his NFL career. Also kind of offers some potential center flex as well. Mason Cole is next up. And Cole was not very good last year. I think even PFF's numbers are probably a bit deceptive as to how much he struggled in 2023. But if the solution has to be, okay, it's got to be Brunskill at guard, then you're probably looking for someone that ends up giving you some center flexibility. And that is where Mason Cole can contribute. Now, today's show was made possible by Game Time. Game Time has the best deals on tickets. They have the lowest price guaranteed thanks to the Game Time guarantee. You find tickets in the same section and row for less. If for whatever event, baseball, basketball, concerts, comedy, theater, football, of course, Game Time has you covered. Same section, same row for less. Game Time's going to credit you 110% of your difference. Keep an eye out for the zone deals. Can't always find them, but when you do, you get to pick the section. Let Game Time choose the seats for you. For big-time savings, by the way, in the process. So download the Game Time app over at gametime.co. Create your account and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. It's a no-brainer. It's gotta use the code, right? Otherwise, you're just wasting money. Terms do apply, but again, create your account, redeem code CHATSPORTS, $20 off your first purchase. That's CHATSPORTS, ChatSports for $20 off. Download Game Time today for last-minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. Next up is Mark Glowinski, who has spent some time with the Colts and the Giants and has been, like a lot of these guys, a bit nicked up, getting up there in age. The tricky bit here for Glowinski is his numbers don't look that bad in 2023, even with the snap counts. This was also one of those scenarios where sometimes if you're like the fourth best offensive lineman on a bad offensive line, you get hidden a little bit because someone else is getting beat quicker. I think that happened a little bit to Glowinski last year. Phil Haynes is next up, if you like the Seahawks, the Titans connection. He is a big body at right guard specifically. Has never really been as powerful in terms of a run blocker as I thought he was going to. And does have a tendency to struggle at times in pass protection as well. Now, Gabe Jackson's been a bit of a journeyman as of late. Had a long career with Raiders for a while, Seattle for a while. Was with Carolina briefly last year. But again, injuries and age and just lack of consistent playing time. And really, I think the decline has set in for Jackson. Justin Pugh is next up here, the also former Giant offensive lineman from straight up the streets, right? For what he was going in last year, I think he held up about as well as reasonably could have been expected. Again, a lot of these options on this list, these are veteran, break glass in case of emergency. But you had a surprise starter, expected starter retire in August, kind of in the break glass in case of emergency status. Now, we are 95 subs away from 9,500 here on Titans Today. Help us get there. Hit that sub button right now. Kind of in the Gabe Jackson category, longtime NFL veteran Trai Turner, who I don't really know if he's actually going to play again. He wasn't too bad, though, the last time he suited up with the Washington Commanders. Had a brief stint with the Steelers and had a very long NFL career, all things considered, for an offensive lineman. But again, maybe one or two of those names intrigue you at most. And I totally get that because it's August and the good offensive linemen aren't available, right? So name a player who you want to sign or trade for. We'll get to that here in just a moment. Number one trade target, and I don't know how realistic it is he's going to be available, is Michael Dunn. I put him on this list because you know that Bill Callahan knows him. He's been, I think, a pretty solid backup offensive lineman. The Browns drafted Zach Zinter. Maybe they'd be okay flipping Dunn for a later day 3 pick, but this would give you the familiarity with your current offensive line coach. Now, Carolina threw big money at the offensive line this offseason, And Chandler Zavala, who I liked coming out of NC State, was terrible last year. I can't understand how bad he was. 37 pressures on 374 snaps. Horrifically bad. Now, I will say, I don't know how much we can blame just Carolina on that for, because I watched Frank Reich have a terrible offensive line in 2022 in Indy. He leaves. The Colts' offensive line was top 10 minimum last year once he left with no personnel changes. I watched Carolina's offensive line go from fine, solid-ish in 2022 to being a dumpster fire in 2023 once Frank Reich arrived. So I am open to exploring Zavala as a rehabilitation option. A former high-round pick, Jackson Carman, is very much available out of Cincinnati. Here's the thing, he's bad. Again, this is a rehabilitation option for Carman, but Brian Callahan knows him, which might actually end up being a bit of a negative from that perspective. Carman has never lived up to his potential for whatever reason. He's been a pretty big disappointment in Cincinnati. Now, if I were the Titans, I'd be calling the Cowboys about TJ Bass, since Brock Hoffman might win the center job, and that would put Cooper Beebe as a backup guard option and potentially bump Bass to the 7th offensive lineman. Bass would be a huge. He was actually pretty good in small sample size last year for Dallas. I doubt they want to trade him. They would love to trade Josh Ball. Now, the 2022 stats look pretty good, right? Good run blocking grade. Super deceptive. He's actually not good at football. He also has got some character stuff from his time at FSU/Marshall that has raised red flags previously. But I think he'd be available. And in August, I at least want to mention one available option.